I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy as happy can be. After all of this isolation, because if you didn't know, I was exposed to somebody who tested positive for COVID. After all this isolation, I can take off what's become known this week as my home uniform and put on my normal work uniform. My home uniform, I decided I needed to wear blue instead of white because the shutters behind me are white, and then you just wouldn't see me, which is not necessarily a bad thing, to be honest. But from tomorrow onwards, hopefully we'll be able to be back in the studio in the normal uniform and doing the show in the normal way. Thank you to the entire team at Mansfield Today for all of the work they've put in this week. There's been a load of extra work that's had to be put in just to make the show run as smoothly as possible. Sunday, and of course, one of our leisure features is gaming. Nick Griffin, the associate editor of Stuff magazine, joins us in the studio, or he's in the studio. I still stay at home. Nick, nice to have you with us once again. You're talking about E3. What is this?
Okay, so E3 is basically the biggest video games expo in the world. It's a highlight of the gaming calendar, and it usually takes place in Los Angeles every single year. But of course, this year, thanks to the COVID pandemic and the third waves rolling around the world, everything happened virtually. But there was still a hell of a lot to get through.
Okay, go through some of that sort of stuff for us.
Okay, so you had the big publishers announcing very big games. Ubisoft, for example, announced a lot of stuff for the games they already have out there: Assassin's Creed, The Crew, Watch Dogs Legion. I think one of the things that will probably be the most interest to your viewers is probably Rocksmith Plus. If you've ever wanted to play the guitar, and of course, if you're in isolation, this also helps. They're basically launching a paid service online which teaches you how to play the guitar. And it teaches you tablature, it teaches you how to play acoustic, it teaches you how to play rock, metal, and all the rest of it. And it even teaches you, the sound effects you would use if one day you do get hold of an amplifier, or if you use your computer as an amplifier, treble, bass, that sort of thing. So it basically can take you from, novice to possibly stadium rock. I don't know, but you'll definitely know how to play the guitar by the end of it. Other than that, you had Microsoft and Bethesda. They announced a lot of big games. Probably the biggest ones were the new Halo game that comes out at the end of the year, an exclusive with Bethesda called Starfield, which is going to put a lot of PlayStation players' noses out of joint. And for my money, what I really, really enjoyed looking at was a game called Back for Blood, which is a 4-player co-op game where you are stuck in the zombie apocalypse and you just have to rely on each other to survive. It's quite fun.
Okay, what's confusing me here, though, Nick, is it sounds like some of these are already in production, and others are sort of still rolling out. What is the status with these games? I mean, is this as a result of COVID?
Some of it is, as a matter of fact. I mean, there have been some games that have been delayed. For example, one of the big games for PlayStation 5 was God of War Ragnarok. And before E3 even happened, the studio had to announce, listen, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're not able to work as effectively as we would in a studio together. So, this game that was supposed to be coming out this year has been kicked to 2022. Some of these games are taking longer to roll off the assembly line because of the pandemic, but obviously there were some that went into production well before the pandemic hit. I mean, if you take, for example, a game like Halo that's coming out this year, that probably went into production about 3 to 4 years ago. I mean, working on a game is a long and lengthy process. I actually don't think a lot of people realize that the game that they hold in their hands sometimes could be anywhere between 2 years worth of development, which is very, very quick, or 5 to 6 years worth of development, depending on the size of the game.
Very briefly, because this fascinates me, very briefly, take me through the process of developing a game.
Oh, well, okay. Essentially what happens is I think some bright spark comes up with an idea. unless, of course, they're making a sequel to something which is already a proven intellectual property, which, you know, and they get investors in who finance it. Then the game goes into production, and you have myriad teams working on myriad things. For example, you've got an art team who are designing the art around it. You have an environmental team that will be designing something. And this is obviously for a very big open world game. I mean, games can also take a year and a half with two guys and a laptop who just have a great idea, and then they sit down and they work on it themselves. But game development can be anything from one bloke and his laptop to a team of people that number in the hundreds. And depending on the size of the game and depending on how the game plays, that's how long it can take to come out. For example, a locally made game by a company called Nyamakop was two students at WITS, and they made their game over a period of, I think, 3 years. And a lot of that period was also them going around the world promoting it at things like E3 when you were still allowed to attend it, and Cologne, Gamescom, places like that. You take a game like the Western Red Dead Redemption 2, that's made by Rockstar North. I think there's 1,000 odd people who work in that studio, and that game had been in production for 5 years before it came out.
5 years for one game.
Yes.
You've got to sell a hell of a lot of games to make back that sort of money, I would imagine.
Well, it is made by Rockstar, and Rockstar are also the company that made Grand Theft Auto 5, which, this might frighten you and your viewers, is the biggest selling, highest earning piece of entertainment in all of human history. It's made more.
Kidding me?
It sold more units and made more money than Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Jeez, that's an amazing fact. That's one to keep in your back pocket and throw out in the pub.
Yeah, well, that's when people say to you, games are just for kids. It's like, I don't think so. I don't think all those kids have that amount of money. Plus, it's an age-restricted game, so it's mostly played by adults.
Nick, thank you very much for your insight once again, and nice to chat with you.
Nice to chat with you too. Stay safe.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye. Nick Cowan, the associate editor of Stuff magazine. My goodness. Selling more than Michael Jackson's Thriller. Would never, ever have guessed that. Until next time, stay safe. Bye-bye.